Hi, I'm Sia.
And I'm Sana, and
This is the
Unfiltered World Podcast.
Today we have two very special guests. We have Commissioner Zur and Mr. Fallon. So could you guys please introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Tracy Zur, Bergen County Commissioner, and I've been now on the Board of Commissioners for 12 years, and one of my most passionate projects that we've been working on has been on dealing with food insecurity in Bergen County. Starting in the pandemic, we realized there was a tremendous need, and it has led to the birth of our Office of Food Security.
And I'm Patrick Fallon. I've been with Bergen County for 7 years. Started here as an aide for one of Tracy's colleagues, and for the last 4 years I've been in our Department of Human Services with Division of Senior Services, and now overseeing our Office of Food Security, as Tracy mentioned.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
it's really great to meet you guys.
Yeah.
I guess we can start with the first question. So, we've talked to lots of people, and we always hear a new perspective about what food insecurity really is, and where it comes from. And we would love to hear your perspectives on this, and any information you think is important for our listeners to know about.
So, a basic definition of food security is having a reliable access to a sufficient quantity of affordable and nutritious food. And the challenge that we have seen so profoundly in our community, in towns and in areas where it's expensive to live, where rent and the mortgage eat first, there's often not enough left over in order to provide that reliable amount of food for our families and our individuals in our community. And whether it's our seniors who are living on fixed incomes as inflation is rising and food costs are going up, who now are finding that they just don't have enough to make it through the month, or individuals or families who are finding a change in circumstances, whether it's a loss of employment or an family illness, or there are a multitude of reasons why people could be facing challenges. And that leads to a situation where you don't know where your next meal is coming from. And unfortunately, we've seen a staggering increase in those numbers here in Bergen County. It's estimated 1 in 6 kids don't know where their next meal is coming from. We're seeing a 23% increase just in this last year. So during the pandemic, I think we all understood people were out of work. There was lines around the block. It was a very visible problem. Now, with the lack of media attention, people don't see it in their faces as much, but the numbers and the need is still increasing every single day here in Bergen County.
Yeah, and I think, obviously Commissioner hit it right on the head, but, one of the privileges of overseeing this office is we get to go out and see it with our own eyes, the people who are fighting food insecurity on the front lines every day. And it truly shows you that this is an issue that can affect anyone at any time, regardless of their zip code, where they live, how successful they may have been. It doesn't matter. This again is something that can strike at any time, and I think what we're trying to do is just change the conversation a little bit, reduce that stigma, let people know that, again, this can happen to anyone, and getting the information out in the community about the organizations that are there to help and get people back on their feet.
I think you touched on an interesting point too, because it's in every single town. Mm-hmm. There are people who are receiving SNAP benefits, which are food supplemental nutrition aid in every single municipality in Bergen County, from Alpine to Franklin Lakes and everywhere in between. There are people who are needing SNAP benefits and needing that support. I think there's so many people who just don't realize the tremendous amount of need because it's silent. It's people are trying to make it work and really needing the help and assistance of their neighbors every single day.
I think this definitely connects with some of the things we talked about with Mr. Dinglison in the first episode. We did, definitely. Talked about how it literally affects everyone, and we don't see it.
Yeah, the whole reason we started this was because we realized in our community there was so many people fighting this every day, and we're like, wow, this is a really important issue that needs to be touched upon.
And when you think about how food insecurity, first of all, usually food insecurity is a symptom of some other challenges that are going on with that individual or that family, whether it is unemployment or domestic violence or any other kind of health situations that are going on for that family. But you think about how do we raise children to succeed in school when they're going to school hungry? How do they complete their schoolwork? I know, especially during the pandemic when everyone was focusing on screens, my kids could barely focus on the screens when they were well fed. But when you're hungry, how are you able to perform and work? And we see the impacts on long-term health implications from food insecurity. It limits your ability to succeed and thrive in the workplace if you're not able to function at your best. Yeah. And so this is something that it actually impacts our entire community and our overall community wellness, is just to help those who are hungry, because our productivity, the way that we're able to move forward economically, is all impacted by this social determinant of health.
Yeah, we definitely agree with that. I mean, we have seen like firsthand, like some of our friends in middle school even.
Yeah, even now in high school.
Yeah, and I think going back to that school lunch thing, I mean, we've seen people even manipulating the system,
and cheat the system so that they can get that free food that is
not
and
meant
free
for
lunch
them.
that is not meant for them at all.
Yeah.
And it's so unfair to the people that actually need it. And it's really like an important issue that needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to be careful, though, because, we talk about this a lot, and it's conversations I know I've had with my colleagues and people out in the community. Unfortunately, there's always going to be people that are looking to take advantage, no matter what the situation is. But that doesn't mean that we need to stigmatize the people that are really, truly in need of that assistance even more, because there are bad actors looking to take advantage of whatever program or resource may be out there. When somebody makes the decision to go to a food pantry or sign up for free and reduced lunch or whatever it may be, but let's just talk about going to a food pantry, they've probably exhausted every other option to feed their family, to cover whatever the hole was, make those really hard decisions. Do I forego paying a bill this month, or do I go to the grocery store and feed my family? Do I forego a meal myself so that my children can eat? And I think that's a big part of what we're doing is we need to just change people's mindset about the reasons why people are accessing this assistance. That's certainly a big challenge that we face, especially in a suburban county like this one, where it's just unfathomable that in some of these communities, the wealthiest zip codes in the United States, people could be experiencing this, but they are. Commissioner Zerb obviously mentioned the SNAP numbers, which we do track. Shameless plug for our website, bergenfightshunger.org, for any of the listeners to check it out and learn a little bit more about what we're about in the Office of Food Security. But the example that I always like to use is a community like Ridgewood. It's one of the wealthiest zip codes in the United States, median income of over $250,000 a year for people living in that community. There's 3 food pantries in Ridgewood serving hundreds of people a month from that community and the immediate area. So,
and the thing too, as far as judgment is concerned, there are people who come to food pantries driving nice cars or wearing nice clothes. That all may be purchased before their circumstances change. Yeah. That may be that car might be on the way to being repossessed, or might be the last thing that they own. You can't make judgments based upon that exterior veneer of what is going on in individual families. And raising awareness and raising compassion and understanding that we really can be forces of help and change as far as this is concerned. It's one of the reasons why I'm so proud of the Oasis system that we're building, that not only it's not about just putting food in people's trunks. It's about connecting them to the services that they need to help lift them out of food insecurity. And by building this system that we've been doing through the Office of Food Security, the real goal is to get to the underlying causes and how we make a dynamic change and shift to make sure people are accessing the benefits they're entitled to making sure that they're getting the right assistance to be able to change their circumstances.
I 100% agree. And, when we were talking and interviewing Mr. Dinglison in the first episode, he talked a lot about how there's this, like you guys were saying, this whole stigma surrounding even just going to the food pantry, because somebody might feel ashamed to, because they're like, oh, what if my friends make fun of me? What if this? And I think that's a mindset that we really need to change.
Yeah.
Because
talking about like the 6 ways.
Yes.
There was a whole acronym, but one of them was just being able to sort of deliver the food to them in a way that makes them feel respected.
Yeah. One of the things that when I started this work during the pandemic, it shocked me how many food pantries we actually have here in Bergen County. And it surprised me that
I think we found
even
even more
right?
since then. We have about 75 on any given day operating up and down Bergen County.
And part of me was like, why are there so many? Why can't they consolidate and share resources and work more efficiently together? And what I really came to realize is that people go for help where they feel comfortable to access it. For some, it will be their church, their synagogue, their mosque, their temple. For some, it will be any place but their church, their synagogue, their mosque, or temple, because they're ashamed what their friends and neighbors might think. Some, some it's limited by transportation and where they can access without a car in the community, and where that pantry might be located might be really critical for them. So it's really interesting to understand how we treat people with dignity. And as we're trying to push out more and more choice model food pantries in Bergen County, how we give people the opportunity to have input in what the food that they're eating, making sure that it's culturally appropriate, making sure it addresses their dietary needs, making sure that they're having autonomy to make those decisions for themselves, empower them to be part of the solutions.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, like, people need more than just the stereotypical canned foods to live, and
they need fresh food. They need produce. They need
exactly.
Yeah, they need everything.
There can be like community gardens. There can be.
Well, and even just that's part of our outreach efforts as well. We're not to keep talking about our magnificent website, which everybody should check out, but we're in the process of updating it so that our residents and people that are interested in donating to a food pantry can inform themselves on, what is a good donation. I think, like you said, the traditional thing that we think of is the shelf-stable items, canned food, and those certainly go a long way in helping people not go hungry. I'm not going to say that it doesn't, and those items are still very important, but we want to let the public know that almost 90% of our pantries in Bergen County have refrigeration or freezer capacity, and that they can accept donations of produce, meats, those perishable items that, just because you're going to a pantry doesn't mean you deserve access to them any less than anybody else does. And also items like hygiene products, paper products, period products, things that
Tide, toothpaste, all those kinds of things you need to run a household aren't covered by SNAP, and they're not covered by WIC. And so those items are super important. Diapers, formula,
pet
things
food,
of that sort. They're critical.
And it's stuff that can be expensive in a lot of cases. In particular those hygiene and period products. So a lot of pantries have really made a point of emphasis on putting the word out to the people that they're donors and their communities that, hey, we need these things. These are things that people need every day to live, healthy and comfortable lives.
And actually, to pick up on a thread that you just mentioned too, the produce and the healthy foods that you would want to eat every single day are even more necessary. We've seen in our community health needs assessment for over a decade that diabetes and obesity and hypertension are hugely present in at-risk and minority populations. And the only way that we're going to address that is by introducing healthier foods, making sure there's more health equity by providing that food that really will be fuel and not just filling. You can go, yes, you can spend the same amount of money at McDonald's versus unhealthy produce. You're going to feel fuller after the McDonald's, but it's not going to be the right fuel that your body needs. And I don't mean to pick on McDonald's. I mean any fast food entity where it's more calories, but not necessarily healthier for you in the long run.
I think that's definitely true. When people usually think of the word like food pantry, they usually think of shelves lined with like canned food.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily healthy anymore.
And that's not what people need in order to sufficiently fuel themselves. I
think it's like a newer thing with just introducing like fresh
and I think it's like, even with the food drives we've tried to do, we've gotten a lot of like even regular food drives, we've gotten a lot of canned food, and we just, we started specifying, we would like some like healthier alternatives. And
listen, even in the world of canned foods, there's different options, ones with less sugar, less sodium, that are healthier for you. So it's, there's so many different ways to address this, but engagement from so many different sectors in our community is really what's key, because we really can be part of this collective that is helping to collaborate and lift people up and change their circumstances.
Yeah, definitely. I think we can move on to the next question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So our very first episode was with Mr. Dinglison. So can you please talk about some of the events that you guys have, I guess, collaborated on with him?
Yeah, we've been so fortunate. I mean, we have a great relationship with the State Food Security Advocate, and that actually started back at his days when he was running QMAC. Throughout the pandemic, we were on each other's speed dial for how we address and how we pivot and adapt to the ongoing changing circumstances. But we've partnered with him. He's been a big endorser of our model with this no wrong door approach that we've been putting forward. We've presented with him both in Atlantic City at the New Jersey Association of Counties meeting. He's come to our summit for the last 2 years in a row to speak to our pantry directors. We've been on other panels with him, whether it was the table to table panel.
Yeah.
He's been, making sure that we're connecting with other counties and that they're coming to us so that we can be the example for them to follow.
Yeah, and I think just in general, we're really lucky to live in a state where the state government has put such an emphasis on this issue, at a statewide level, but really drilling down to what's working at the county level and bringing all those offices together in one place, which myself and my colleagues have had the opportunity to do a couple of times, and meet our counterparts and develop those relationships. Learn about, here's what we're doing in Bergen County, but what are they doing in Middlesex County? What are they doing in Mercer County? We've been able to develop some great relationships with our counterparts, here at our borders in Passaic and Hudson County as well. So just pushing everybody towards the kind of regional collaboration, identifying those best practices, is really a great thing to be able to participate in because of the Office of Food Security Advocate and trying to identify those things.
And we constantly are learning from what our neighbors are doing, but I am also really proud of the fact that they're constantly coming to us to learn from the model that we have set forth. This model has now been recognized by the National Association of Counties. We got an award just this past month from them, and we are continually getting feedback about this is really an innovative way of looking at holistically at people as human beings and addressing all of their needs rather than only looking at food.
Yeah. So just a quick question. So you talked about the pandemic and how it caused a lot of issues. So what happened? Could you explain it a little bit? How did it lead to this issue?
So, I think obviously early on we all remember seeing, and I will admit I was not with this office when the pandemic initially hit. I did get sort of a look in on the issue of food insecurity in the job I was in at the time when, I was basically called up to work for our Meals on Wheels down in senior services when the roster of clients tripled in the span of about 2 weeks because of
everyone was a homebound senior.
Yeah.
Seniors were told they needed to stay home.
But obviously there's the sort of there's the public health concerns, obviously, but I think you had the economic issues that were tied to the pandemic, businesses closing and limiting hours and limiting operations, and you had so many people who were, totally financially unstable, maybe for the first times in their lives. And we saw the images from across the country of, long food lines. We saw them here in Bergen County. Tracy was on the front lines more so than I was back then, but
there were whole sectors of our economy that were no longer working. Whether you were a restaurant worker or a wedding photographer or a travel agent, there were just whole swaths of our population who were overnight unemployed. And some of them, especially those who were independent business owners, there was no unemployment insurance for them. There was no backstop from benefits. And so huge segments of our population were newly, as you said, food insecure. Didn't know, you can plan for, as you budget in your life, certain, contingencies. My refrigerator might break. I might have a car repair. But no one planned on businesses being shut down for months upon months upon months. And so how you deal with that personally in your own economics really was what led to this massive increase. Not to mention the fact that you had seniors who were now being told they needed to stay home. You had shortages, supply chain shortages that were causing inflation on things like tuna fish went through the roof, that you couldn't get toilet paper. All these things that we remember from the pandemic as being, one-offs, all caused massive impacts for families who were struggling and who were just trying to get by. So, you expect economic disruption in those times. What's been concerning is, they did a study in 2008, there was a recession, and the peak of food insecurity hit 2 years after that recession. And it took 10 years to get back to pre-recession levels of hunger in the community.
Wow.
We're seeing now, we haven't even hit the peak. So that's what's so disconcerting. We know we're in for a marathon. And I will say, I'm so grateful to our county executive and to my colleagues on the Board of Commissioners who allocated significant dollars to bolstering our food pantries. We've pushed out, $1.6 million?
Yeah, $1.6 million in direct grant funding to just about 60 agencies across Bergen County to really try and increase the capacity for right now. And, the pantries are seeing more people now than they did even in the height of the pandemic, and also prepare them for the next emergency. Hopefully it doesn't come for another 100 years or more, if we're lucky, but they will be ready because of the work we've done to prepare them.
And we've actually pushed out more than that, because even under CARES, the
Yeah,
first
that's
round of
just
funding,
American Rescue Plan.
we pushed out, refrigeration and computers, and redid floors and updated shelving systems and made sure that they're ready for this marathon that is ahead. And most importantly, what I'm maybe the most proud of what the Office of Food Security has accomplished is we've built this community around food insecurity. These pantries were operating in silos for so many years. They weren't connected to the community food bank or to other sources of food, and they most importantly weren't connected to each other. Now we're having conversations about best practices. Now they can turn to each other and get guidance. And if somebody gets a really good donation, they can share it among other partners. Or, if they're experiencing a shortage and don't have enough for this week's distribution, they may be able to reach out to their neighbors and to their partners and to understand that we're all in it together. That's been, I think, the most impactful change that we've seen because of the Office of Food Security.
I definitely saw that at the summit. I was sitting at a table, and the different directors of the different pantries, they were talking about strategies that work, things that don't work, things that they need help on. And I think it was nice just seeing everyone helping each other, and talking about what goes on at their pantries.
Yeah, because with a community, you have strength that comes with it.
Yeah, and I think so many of these nonprofits that used to view each other as competitors rather than collaborators,
100%.
and now they realize that they really can do so much more and be that much more impactful together.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's definitely.
Definitely. We want to move on to the next.
Yeah, sure. So, I guess we kind of touched on this already, but we wanted to ask you guys about your initiative and your passion for food security. So, where did that start, and how did that lead you to creating your task force, basically?
So, I think had you asked me before the pandemic if food security would have been, I would have kind of chuckled, because I didn't really even see the massive challenge that was going on in our communities. It really is so under wraps and under, kind of hidden within our neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. During the pandemic, very early on, I was calling around to so many of our nonprofit partners and getting what they were seeing on the ground. And there was lines around the corner, no seniors. So understand, it used to be people would come to church, or the Girl Scouts would stand out, and they'd collect cans every Sunday, or the Girl Scouts would stand in front of the ShopRite. All of a sudden you had no church, no Girl Scouts standing in front of ShopRite. And it used to be that the seniors would come during the week and volunteer. Now you had no senior citizen volunteers anymore. And these pantries were still now meeting total spikes in need that they'd never seen before. Mm-hmm. Not to mention the fact that they didn't have adequate protection for themselves as far as masks at the beginning of the pandemic. And really how we pivoted to be able to help, almost immediately I said to the county executive, we have a crisis here and we need to do something about it. We launched the Food Security Task Force in July of 2020. And, we're off to the races as far as, how can we help you gain food? And at the beginning, we were much more into food distributions. Anyone who was on my team at the time is scarred permanently by distributing 125,000 pounds of yams for that first Thanksgiving. They were supposed to be coming boxed in small boxes, and they didn't. We had to rebag them, and it was fascinating. But we did emergency food box distributions. We did toilet paper distributions. We were just trying to get more food into the system and help these pantry directors who had no way of budgeting for what was ahead, and support them in those efforts. But pretty quickly we realized that our larger strength was going to be in trying to bolster them and trying to invest in their futures in a different way.
And I guess that's sort of where I kind of came on the scene. Again, like I mentioned, I have a background, at least for a little while, working down in our Department of Human Services, sort of building those relationships with my colleagues across the divisions, that go from seniors to Office for Children and Alternatives to Domestic Violence, really just this wide swath of services. And I certainly had been aware of the work of the task force, knowing Commissioner Zur and some of the other folks that were involved early on. And I had been working on a program that, dealt with another kind of vulnerable, sector of the population, advocating for folks who were survivors of elder abuse, something that also is going on sort of under wraps and a heavily stigmatized issue. But, I was approached and, really made it my mission to try and guide the transition from the task force and the sort of emergency operations that we had been operating under during the throes of COVID into a more permanent office that was going to be focused on resource connection and making sure that our pantry directors had all of the tools and information that they needed to help folks coming to their pantries make those connections.
And I think that realization was also a really important one for us, is that there was food insecurity before the pandemic, and there's going to be food insecurity after the pandemic. And so this isn't just a task force that needed an emergency response. It's something that needs long-term attention by our county government, where we're in a position to really connect the dots between our municipalities, between our nonprofit partners, between our hospitals and our healthcare providers, between our school districts, and really look holistically at this problem and this challenge and convene, as many people as we can to be part of the solutions for how we truly address hunger here in Bergen County.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely resonate with the last point. I think before the pandemic, I personally did not really, even think about food insecurity as much as I do now. Even during it, because
I still had toilet paper.
Exactly.
I still had all these
things. It didn't
things.
directly affect us. So I feel like once you don't see it for yourself, you don't really think about it as often.
Yeah.
And I think, certainly I would encourage all the listeners to find and visit their local food pantry. And the first time you go, it will dispel any preconceived notions you may have about who is being served by these organizations. You may have a stereotype or something in your mind of who needs this assistance, and that will very quickly be dissolved, when you see the work that is going on at these places on the front lines.
And there's so many ways you can help. Whether it's actually rolling up your sleeves and helping pack boxes or sort donations, whether it's writing a check and donating to the pantry itself, or whether it's donating your time and your talents, as far as most of these food pantries need help updating their websites or helping with data.
Or balancing running a balance sheet. Whatever it is. There's so, like the commissioner said, there's so much more than just unloading the truck and putting some cans on a shelf, even though that is desperately needed. Especially from folks like yourself and the next generation. We need to find that next generation of volunteers that's going to support these organizations that are doing so much good for decades to come. But I think you make a great point in saying that it doesn't just have to be that.
And so many of these pantries are run by wonderful people who are definitely older and not as computer savvy and not as attuned to outreach and communication in the same way that the newer generation, the next generation is. And so there's certainly ways that people your age can go in and be really helpful and impactful, making a difference in those pantries. So whether it's outreaching to their local businesses or getting sponsorships or running food drives at your school schools, or engaging with us in Super Bowl or a construction.
We've got Super Bowl royalty here with us today.
I know, it's so true. But there's so many ways that you can really make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, even in like our school community, we want to like educate even just our club members about how important this is, because yes, they're in our club, but we want them to fully understand and grasp the idea of how important this issue is.
Well, if you go onto our website,
BergenFightHunker.org,
you can find out when each of the food pantries has their distributions and when you can plug in. There's many that have them, there's several that come to mind that have them either in after school hours or on weekends, where you can be helpful and actually get that frontline view and educate yourself really fully on what the need truly is in our community.
It's definitely an eye-opening experience for people too when they go. We have a food pantry finder, which is very cool. Where you just put in your zip code or your home address, whatever, type in the name of your town, and then no matter where you are, the map lights up, with all the dots on the map of the different providers and people who are doing this work every day all across Bergen County. So would encourage everybody to see who's in your area and find the best way to support those organizations. Whenever people reach out to our office, recently we actually had a gentleman who runs he's a foot doctor, reached out, hey, we used to support some pantries back in the day. We want to get back into it. How do we do that? So it's like, okay, what's your address? You're going to go to this website, put it in. You pick any number of these dots on the map, and we tell people to reach out and ask, hey, what are your most needed items? What do you need right now that we can run a drive for? Even if it's just one specific item, that's something we've heard from pantries. This month we want peanut butter. This month we want diapers. This month we want tampons and pads. It really varies from place to place. So that's a big point of emphasis from us, to really try and develop that relationship and find out what the needs are, rather than just cleaning out the pantry.
And also, by the way, if you're a home gardener and you have like a ridiculous amount of zucchini in your garden right now because it's zucchini season, you can donate that fresh produce to your food pantries as well, and they will be very grateful to accept it. And so it's just finding out their hours of operation and making sure that you can connect the dots, and you can do that on BergenFightsHunger.org.
Yeah, we will. I think we're actually planning on a little project for a community garden very soon.
Very nice.
So, excellent.
And hopefully we'll grow some zucchini.
We'll grow some.
Whatever you grow, it will go to very good use at our food pantry. That is for sure.
Yeah. I think we can move on to the next question.
All
right. We just want to know more about like your experience with the people that have received the food. What has been your experience with them?
So in the Office of Food Security, we deal much more with the food pantry directors than with the actual individual clients. We've all been in food distributions where we've seen the looks of gratitude or the appreciation, or gotten feedback from the pantry directors regarding how impactful either the hot meals we distributed through Feed the Front Lines or what's going on. And each individual case is so different. The way that food insecurity impacts one person is just the way that it impacts that one person. It's it means so much to different people in different ways, and
and I know that when we have the opportunity to go to distributions, you can see that what is being provided is so much more than just a bag of food. It's a chance for the person who you don't know what they're going through behind the scenes, and it really is a credit to our pantry directors and volunteers who absorb all of this trauma, which in some cases is immense, and still every day, go out and do what they need to do and treat people with dignity and respect and serve them without judgment, which is universal. That is the hallmark of our food pantries in Bergen County. But what they are able to provide, even if it's just for a moment, is a chance to take a deep breath, to reduce that stress, to not have to worry about where the next meal is coming from for a day, for a week, however long. And that's what I would say about maybe the one common thread of the folks that are receiving this assistance is, I think they know that it is so much more than just some food in a bag. It is a lifeline. It is, even if just for a fleeting moment, just some peace of mind for themselves and their family.
Yeah, and I've kind of realized that, like, food insecurity, it's like a chain reaction for events in people's lives. Like, I hope you guys don't mind if I share a little story.
Go for it.
So I intern with a judge in Passaic County, and so I go through, like, cases, and I'm reading the cases. And so I was going through this one person's criminal history, and this person started, like, his first conviction was when he was 11, and he was shoplifting. And I actually saw the case get tried, and in court the judge asked him, like, why did you start so early? Like, what led you to this? And, he was like, my mom was sick when I was young. I had to, like, steal to eat. I had to steal to survive because I couldn't do anything. And I feel like that's such a, like, I don't know, that just hit me. Like, when I was there, like, that day, I was like, wow, this is really, like, something that needs to be talked about, because from just not being able to eat food to having your life, like, having, like, 10 years in prison because of all these events that, like, are unpreventable in your life. Like, it's really important.
We saw it during the pandemic. There was a municipality that did 3 times a week food distributions. Mm-hmm. And the police officer who's in charge of community policing reported to me the fact that in the period of time that they were doing those distributions, drug overdoses, domestic violence calls, and theft went down in the community. Not documented for a study, but definitely anecdotal, real, concrete points of how interconnected it all is, and how really all boats rise when we help and address food insecurity. It makes us all, better able to cope if we're well fed and well nourished, and have that ability to meet that most base need in our lives.
And I think it's interesting that you use the term a chain reaction, because obviously that was a negative chain reaction, that story. But I think we want to see the opposite happen.
Mm-hmm.
These positive chain reactions where somebody made the decision to go to a food pantry, and because they trusted the pantry director, they spoke up about some issue that they were having, whether it was with themselves or a member of their family. And because that pantry director was connected with us, we were able to get that individual signed up for a service or a program that's going to help them reduce their reliance on the pantry. So I think that can sort of go the other way too. And that's kind of what we bring to the table. Like, we're just trying to get as many of those positive outcomes as we possibly can, moving people towards getting all the support that they need and not just relying on the pantry, and hopefully, taking a little bit of the pressure off of the pantries that we've seen over the last 4 years.
Yeah, I think I remember talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about how no one's really born a bad person. It's just things in their life that sort of bring them to that stage where they have to do something in order to literally survive. Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that pyramid, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's like, unless you can meet your base level of food, clothing, and shelter, you can't work on anything else after that. And so making sure that foundation of that pyramid is strong for our residents so that they can go forward and thrive is really what our focus is, because that's what's going to make Bergen County as a community even stronger.
And especially, like, with what I saw from this, like, especially, like, the need of educating children about this, to know that they can also receive that help. I think that's also really important, because it's, like,
I think addressing it early on.
And I think what that story represents is somebody who, the system that we sort of all operate in here, there were so many opportunities for there to be an intervention for that individual throughout the course of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think the position that our pantry directors are in as really these kind of hubs of trust and information in the community is they can open the door to the positive intervention that may not have been possible without them. As the commissioner knows, been on the end of many constituent calls in her role, and something that I have experience with too. There's just a lack of trust between, the general public and a government office. Sometimes, it can be intimidating, frustrating. You don't know what you need to get the service that you want. You may not even know what service you want. And, I can remember many times in my career just talking with people that had their case passed on by so many people. We're not the right office. Call these people, call these people, call these people. And by the time they get to the right place, you can just hear the desperation in someone's voice.
And that's what's so key about this no wrong door approach that we're building, is that it enables there to be seamless referrals, where it then goes on the caseworker from that organization to pick up the baton and help, rather than falling that whole burden on the person who's already dealing with trauma.
Okay, I think we can move on to the next question.
Sure.
Okay.
So what are some of the pressing issues in the food security community, at the moment, and what issues do you think need to be addressed but are overlooked? I know we kind of just talked about this, but if there's anything else.
I think definitely, there's still issues with the supply chain. There's not enough access to those kind of fresh and healthy items that we know people are clamoring for. And, we've done surveys year after year that say that produce is the number one item requested by pantries and the people that are going there. So I think that's probably one of the big issues, is just trying to find that consistent pipeline for high quality, fresh, nutritious, not overly processed food, to get into people's homes. And our pantry directors, you've never seen a group of people do more with less. They make it work. They stretch shoestring budgets and glean, and they build those relationships with their grocery store managers and restaurants and other businesses in town to get as much of that as they can. But it's all sort of piecemeal.
I think for me, one of the things I'm most worried about is burnout.
Yeah.
These pantry directors have been through so much in the last 5 years through this pandemic and beyond. The weight of the world, feeling that they feel they're personally responsible for being that lifeline for so many families, and they're getting tired, and they need support, and they need the next generation to step up and step forward. And that goes for them and for their volunteers as well. It's just how you keep people involved and engaged when they're feeling that weight of so many families on their shoulders. So for me, that's one of the things that I'm really concerned about going forward, is how we help support them so that they feel embraced and they feel valued, and they feel that they're not alone in this work.
Yeah, and these jobs aren't easy. The pay is not good, if there is even any at all. You're dealing with people
We're
distressed in crisis, over and over and over and over again every day. And
take that home.
You take it home, but when you're at the pantry, you put it to the side because you just want to help these people get through what they're going through. And that's a lot for somebody to carry. Just the trauma and the misfortune that these people have suffered that are coming, into these places. So you have to be a strong person to keep going. Right. I think we're lucky in Bergen County to have a lot of strong people, running these organizations.
And I'm sure we could talk for 6 more hours about things like, SNAP levels and making sure that we're accessing and having enough navigation to get people connected to the benefits. There's so many different issues. That question alone could, be 7 episodes of your podcast. But the bottom line is, we're all here to try and be that support network for our pantry directors, to be that loudspeaker of advocacy and bringing this issue to the forefront, because it needs to be. I think with the lack of the news cameras focusing on the lines of cars, the attention of our community is no longer on this issue, and we need people's support and help.
Yeah, definitely. I think this kind of ties into the last question. So how do you think businesses, companies, and just I guess
as the community,
can sort of contribute to the efforts to alleviate poverty and food insecurity?
Well, certainly we encourage everyone to find their local food pantry. I won't say the name of the website again, but we know where to go at this point. But it really is like we've said, the people that run these places have carried the weight of the world. They are truly everyday heroes that, do so much good and help so many people in very difficult situations every single day. And I think just sort of on a human level, we all need to step up and do more to support our neighbors, to invest in our communities, to make sure that rising tide is lifting all the boats. But I think more specifically, particularly for those businesses that maybe in food service, markets, farmers markets, grocery stores, that kind of thing, don't be shy about participating in gleaning programs, that may be the only avenue for pantries to get those fresh items on a consistent basis. Even if it's something that the store can't sell for whatever reason, it's perfectly fine to eat, especially when it comes to produce, meats, dairy products, those kind of things. So we encourage those places. There's no need to throw that food away. You can pay it forward and give it to these organizations that are doing so much good, and provide people with the food that they are clamoring for.
It's also we ran a pilot which was really successful for over a year, where we had a doctor's office practice first sponsor the produce needs in a certain pantry, and then when the funding ran out for it, they went to their employees and asked, do you want to continue? And for like 25 cents an employee per pay period, they would all chip in and cover all of the produce needs for a small pantry. So there's ways that you can be impactful and get the food that our neighbors need to them in dignified ways as well. And our corporate partners really can be part of, whether it's a Jeans Day where you're raising money and funding for a food pantry, or being part of different events that the pantries are sponsoring, whether they're snack packing events or other things. If you're a business and you want to brainstorm with us, Patrick and I are both happy to have that conversation about how you can engage, because there are just so many ways that you can be impactful.
And there are ways to sort of make it fun, have a little friendly competition. Some of the initiatives that we've done, that the two of you have participated in, like our Super Bowl, which we're looking to expand this year.
More school rivalries, getting more schools
involved.
involved.
And that can, there's potential for that in every municipality. The police department versus the fire department, who can collect the most donations. Which Girl Scout troop can raise the most money, to donate to the local food pantry. There are ways to make it fun. Maybe talk about this in a little bit of a different way. A lot of what we talked about is sort of the hardships that people are encouraging, but there still is. You go to these places and there is a sense of hope, right? And we want to do things that are positive to support these people that are giving that hope in the community. So, again, like Tracy said, there's if you have ideas and you want to stand something up, we're happy to help anybody do it.
We're still gonna win the Super Bowl, just saying.
Okay.
Well, now it's a real rivalry, because Bergen Tech has won once, and now BCA has won the second one.
Keep our title?
Yeah, we have to keep our title.
We're gonna have a real trophy this year too.
Oh,
it's gonna be the golden soup can.
Actually,
the only trophy our school's ever gonna get. I'm not hating on the sports teams, I swear. Just to everybody who's listening, just realize you might just be one person, but you can make a difference.
Absolutely.
You can do so much just to help. You're not yes, you're a single person, but just one donation, one
idea,
one educational,
one passionate person.
Exactly.
Is all it takes.
And I'll just share a quick story sort of to reinforce that point. And I think Tracy knows where I'm going here, but so our busiest single site food pantry in the county is the Franciscan Community Development Center down in Fairview. Mm-hmm. They serve over 5,000 people a month at that pantry, and I want the two of you to guess how many full-time staff people they have running that pantry that's serving 5,000 people per month.
500?
Okay.
I'm gonna guess 5 or less than 15 people.
Okay. So you're definitely closer. So this pantry that serves 5,000 people a month has one full-time director and 2 nuns that run the pantry. They're the only full-time staff. their distribution, they'll have a handful of volunteers. But I think that just goes to show you, it only takes a few people to make such an immense change in the community. And we've had the privilege to see that in action many times down there in Fairview and at all of our pantries. And I think we'd be remiss not to just say thank you to the people that are doing this work all over Bergen County, who the emergencies never ended for them. COVID is over, we're all done with it, but
the need is still there.
Yeah.
and it's greater than it's ever been. And they get up each and every day and they meet that need. And nothing that we do in this office matters without them, without their buy-in. So, any opportunity we have to give them their flowers, we do it.
Yeah.
I think that sort of brings us to the
Towards
end.
the end. Do you guys have any questions for us that you want to ask, or?
No, we're excited you're part
Yeah.
of the conversation.
We definitely would encourage your followers to, we've talked a lot about our website, but follow us on Instagram, Bergen OFS. We're going to be doing a big month of action and outreach for September, which
Hunger Action Month?
Yes, Hunger Action Month, including a Wear Orange Day towards the end of the month, because orange is the color of hunger awareness. So, would love for you guys, maybe at school with the club that you have, to maybe organize some of your fellow students, wearing orange in support of Hunger Action Month. I think our day is going to be September 24th. So,
We'll try to match,
but yeah.
Instead of an event.
we can,
With our club.
we can
Yeah.
do something fun.
So, but we're going to be posting lots of cool stuff. We have, some kind of action item or just informational thing every day of the month to learn about food pantries, how you can support them, how you can get involved. So definitely be on the lookout for that on our Instagram, which once again is Bergen OFS.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you, Commissioner Zur and Mr. Fallon, for being here with us today. We're really grateful for your time. and
Thanks
we
for having us.
Thank you.
I really
Thank
appreciate
you
the
so
opportunity.
much.
Definitely learned a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for everyone for listening to our very special episode. And until next time, this is the
Unfiltered World Podcast.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.